Welcome to our kitchen. I have a helper today. My son is off school because of some icy weather. So we are making apple pie, and we are being inspired by the book How to Make an Apple Pie and See the World by Marjorie Priceman. And this is an oldie but goodie. This book is been in print for a while, since 1994. And it is the story of someone who wants to make an apple pie, and they travel around the world because the market's closed, and they travel around the world collecting the ingredients that they're going to need. So they go to France to a chicken to get an egg, they go to Sri Lanka to get cinnamon, and then back home to the United States to pick apples in Vermont, and then they come home to make an apple pie. And in the back of the book is a recipe, a very simple recipe for apple pie. So as always, we're gonna improvise a little bit, and we're gonna kind of make a half of an apple pie because we only have 3 apples, and the recipe calls for 5 to 7 apples. So we're gonna do kind of a half of an apple pie, okay? All right, so we're gonna get our filling going first so that it can kind of sit and macerate a little bit and get nice and juicy. So you wanna go ahead and peel the apples. Apples and bananas. Apples and bananas. So remember, we gotta push this and pull it. Oh, let's move those back. Okay, now it's ready to go on. It's been a little while since we've used this. So this is a apple peeler and slicer all at the same time. And when we usually pick apples in the fall, we like to use this, especially when we are making things like apple pie, or maybe the other way. There you go. Or homemade applesauce, which we haven't made in a long time. So this is kind of fun to turn and spin. And you get these long apple peels and see if you can get it in one without breaking. And it's going to core the apple for us, and then we're gonna end up with these lovely slices that we're just gonna slice in half or maybe quarters, depending on what we wanna do here. And then we're just gonna add them to our bowl. And to that, we're gonna add some sugar and some cinnamon and some salt. Woo, good job. That's always the tricky part. All right, so we gotta press this and pull it back in. These are kind of fun to snack on too, aren't they? So this does a pretty good job. I see there's a few seeds that are left in this one. Sometimes if your apple is not perfectly round, that happens, and that's okay because no apple is absolutely perfect. There's actually quite, ooh, nice. All in one long strippy strip. There's actually quite a few picture books that have recipes included in them, from applesauce to apple pies. And I will link down below you gotta press this button, a list of apple books, and I've noted which ones also have recipes with them besides the one we're being inspired by today. So when I was little, my mom used to make apple pie, and she used to put raisins in her apple pie. But some people in our family do not like raisins. Yeah, 2 out of the 4 of us do not like raisins in their apple pie. So we will not put raisins in today. All right, easy peasy. Now you get to decide, do you want to slice these in half or in quarters and add them to the bowl? So your choice, chef's choice. I'm gonna clear this out of the way. Do you want me to save these apple peelings? Okay. Ooh, I wonder what these apple peelings would taste like if we put them in the dehydrator. That might be good. And it's okay if a few little peels get in there. Usually the very top, after you use this particular peeler, leaves the peel right on kind of your top slice, so you can either discard that or just include it. Snack on the peels, not the apples. We don't have enough. Apples are one of your favorite fruity snacks, though, aren't they? You like apples with peanut butter. All right, so as soon as he gets all these apple slices in here, we are going to add some sugar, a little bit of cinnamon, and a little bit of salt, and then we're gonna stir that up, and we're just gonna let that sit while we go ahead and make the crust. I always like to let mine sit for a little while and get those, especially the salt will pull out some of the juices of the apples, and then it kind of gives you that kind of juicier pie. So we are gonna kind of sort of have this recipe. So we are gonna need a half a cup of sugar, and since your hands are kind of sticky with apples, you wanna wash them? All right, so we want a half a cup of sugar. We are just going to use regular sugar. I know that one's kind of hard to see on there. You see where it is? The cup part's on this side. Now you see where a half cup is? Yep, and you got it. So we're gonna use regular sugar today. Could use brown sugar. Sometimes I do half brown sugar and half white sugar. And we'll add in about a teaspoon of cinnamon. Yep, that looks good. Yep, looks good right there. All right, need a teaspoon of cinnamon. Sometimes I like to add some nutmeg. Oops, got a little spill on the counter there. And we need a quarter teaspoon of salt. Got that all in there? Just give it a gentle stir here, or a gentle shake, maybe a stir. Would you like this spoon? I'll put that spoon there for you. So once this gets mixed up, we're gonna let it sit while we make our crust. I'm gonna go ahead and make, even though we're having the recipe, I'm gonna go ahead and make a full recipe of the crust, which will give us a normal pan size of top and bottom, because pie crust freezes really well. So we'll just go ahead and make two. We'll only use one today, but then we'll have the other one in the freezer for when we want to make another pie soon, which I'm sure my family would love another pie soon. So this pie will go really well with our dinner tonight, because for dinner tonight, we're gonna roast a chicken and have potatoes. Haven't decided if we should have roasted potatoes or mashed potatoes. Maybe, I don't know. What do you think? Mashed potatoes, which is a very homey comfort food meal, and what's more comforting than apple pie? Now the question is, if we want apple pie a la mode, do we have the ingredient to make it a la mode? Ice cream? I don't think we have vanilla ice cream. So this might be pie by itself, huh? All right, so we got that all nice and coated. So it is gonna sit, and the longer we let it sit here, it's just gonna get a little bit juicier. So we're going to move on to our pie crust. So we'll leave our salt here because we need salt. And then we just need some flour and water, ice water and butter. So let's get those ingredients going. We're also going to set our oven to 425 degrees, which is a great thing to have the kids do, and I should have let you do that. But it's a good thing to have for little ones to do, because then they can practice their numbers and finding their numbers. All right, so we need 2 cups of flour. 2 cups of flour. So we're gonna add 2 cups of flour into our bowl, and then we're gonna mix in the salt, and then we're gonna put in the very cold butter, and we're gonna put in a cup of butter, and then we're going to use our little pastry cutter to cut in the butter to the flour. And we get that all cut in, then we are going to add some ice water. All right, to that we need 1 teaspoon of salt. That's a little pinch extra. So if you want to use the fork there and just kind of gently blend that together. Call for shortening or lard or oil, but this recipe calls for butter, and I'm a big fan of butter, so we're going with butter. 2 sticks of butter. Whoops, that's not a whole stick. So let's cut that in chunks, but try not to touch it with our hands because we don't want it to get warm. But let's put it in chunks before we add it in, and it'll be a little bit easier to break up. The reason we try not to touch it too much with our hands is because our hands are so warm and it starts to melt the butter. And the key to good pie crust and pastries is to have nice cold butter. Pastry, have you ever used this pastry cutter before? So all you do with the pastry cutter is you just kind of smash down, and it's going to kind of start to make little clumps as it blends with the flour, and as you start to get it mixed in a little bit, it becomes a little bit easier. If you did not have a pastry cutter like this, you could do this in the food processor also. So once we get this kind of blended in and we get kind of pea-sized pieces, then we will add our cold water, ice cold water, and we're gonna stir it together just until it combines. And then we're gonna divide it into 2 pieces. Because we're only doing a half of a pie today, we're only gonna use 1 crust to roll out, and we will put the other crust, we'll wrap the other crust and put it in the freezer to save for another time. Do you have a favorite kind of pie?
Lemon or cherry.
Lemon or cherry. You're also really good at making another kind of pie. Which pie are you really good at making? Pecan pie, yes. You've had rave reviews for your pecan pie. All right, so we have the butter combined into the flour, and we have kind of pea-sized pieces. This little tool, this pastry cutter, is a great thing if you have small kids who are working on hand strength for writing. This is a great thing to let them do. Really works those muscles. So we have this here. We are gonna add in a half a cup of cold water, and we are just gonna stir until it's combined. We don't wanna over mix it, okay? All right, you are snacking again. Do you want me to do this or you wanna do it? Me, you, okay. All right, so you're gonna pour in the water, and we're gonna mix it just till it's combined. Then we're going to divide it into 2. Of course, if you didn't want to make your own pie crust, we cheat sometimes, don't we? And we just buy pie crust. That's okay too. Although I will say it is nice to have some in the freezer, because then you can just pull those out and use those. So he's going to stir this just until it combines. Or if you were like my Aunt Sheila, who we used to go apple picking when I was little every year to a farm, and they sold pies there, and she would always call and reserve a pie to make sure that there was a pie for her to buy at apple pie, so that they wouldn't run out, because it was about a 45-minute drive or so to get to the farm where we picked apples when I was little, and there would always be a pie there with her name on it. She would make sure, because she was not a baker, but she sure did like apple pie. So we're gonna divide half of this, and then we are gonna roll it out between some wax paper. Oops, I don't have much wax paper left. So we will use part wax paper and part parchment paper. always improvising in the kitchen. Parchment paper will work just fine. We're just going to kind of form it into a ball like that. There you go. Rolling. Okay. And you get the rolling pin out. Let's use a rolling pin because remember your hand is warm and we don't want it to get warm. So let's use a rolling pin. So we're gonna get this kind of rolled out into a sort of circle. Doesn't have to be perfect. I think we got that thin enough. All right, so we're gonna peel off gently. Stick on you. Peel off this top layer. Okay, and we're going to bring over our pie plate and we'll tip it over onto our pie plate. No need to grease a pie plate because you've got lots of butter in there. Okay. Kind of press it down there. And then we're going to carefully peel our parchment paper off. And if there's some hanging over the sides, it's fine because we're doing a half pie. We're gonna fold this over on itself anyway, so we don't need to do any kind of trimming right now. Look at that. Nice job. Okay, now you just wanna kind of gently push in the corners, at least on one side. The other side, you don't have to, don't do this side, don't do it all the way around because we're gonna pull this up over. So, because we're making a half a pie.
Right here.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna bring our apples back over. And we're gonna give these a good stir. I don't know if you can see down there, it made some nice juice. It's good. Make sure everything, you wanna dump those into the half side. I don't think we've ever done a half apple pie before. So we might have to take some and pile them up on top because it'll cook down, so it'll flatten when it's cooking, so it's okay if it's nice and high. Great. Move this out of the way. All right, so we're gonna kind of take this and pull it up and over so it meets on this other side. And we've got a little extra on this side and we have a kind of a little hole right there so we can take some and put it over there.
It's okay if there's holes because it can use the holes to breathe.
That's right, it does need some vent holes, doesn't it? And we'll kind of crimp these edges. It's rustic, right? All right, so we've got a couple little holes in here, which is good, but why don't you get a knife and we'll put a few more vent holes in it. We want it to vent while it bakes. So we are gonna stick our half pie into the oven and we're probably gonna cook it for, we'll let it go probably about 40 minutes and then we'll check on it and see where it's at. I think we'll go ahead and if we have, oh look, we have a few little pieces here if we need to patch some holes. I think we'll go ahead and put this on a pan just in case some of our rustic edges start to leak some juices. That way the pan will collect it. So we'll do that. And we will put it in the oven for about 40 minutes and then we will be back to check. You don't think it'll flow out? Okay. So we're gonna put our half pie into the oven and we'll be back when it's done. All right, it's out of the oven and a lot of juice kind of seeped out of there. So I just took a spoon and spooned it over the top, which looks absolutely scrumptious. We're gonna let it cool a little bit. And if we had some ice cream, it would be perfect with this. But this will make a great little dessert inspired by the book, How to Make an Apple Pie and See the World. Until next time, this is Jody Rodriguez from Growing Book by Book, and I can't wait until we get into the kitchen next time to enjoy some more cooking book by book. Bye, friends.